Hello and welcome back to the S.H.E Gallery Show. Thank you for being with us today. Today we are here with a very special guest, Miguel Aguilar. Thank you for being with us.
Of course. Hi.
Also known as Kane One. He is a Chicago graffiti writer since the 1989, growing up in Pilsen here in Chicago. And you've not only been a student, you've also become a teacher, you've changed history, you wrote a thesis and said you're going to accept graffiti as an art form because this is what I do. So this is somebody that stayed so true to himself, like grassroots at like its best for sure. Stayed so true to himself that he did not try to be somebody else when he did get to go to art school. He said, this is what I do, this is my art. And we're going to learn a lot more about that and all of his achievements. So why don't we talk a little bit more about your background growing up here in Pilsen?
Sure. Yeah, I've lived in the same building my entire life, actually. So I've gotten to see Pilsen in the late 70s and early 80s when it was really rough to live there. And now that it's not so bad, I'm enjoying how I can walk around and not feel afraid.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some things that you think helped you like stay out of trouble?
I think it was real. None of this was planned, obviously. Mm-hmm. And now looking back, there were just moments in time growing up where I just caught a glimpse of something that was cool or something that was like fun, or people in the neighborhood that were doing really cool things. Like there were a lot of older DJs in the neighborhood when I was growing up. But like even people that were really into all sorts of trouble or couldn't find like the right path to do things, even seeing them enjoy themselves. Like you would see the open pump, like all the gangbangers would stop gangbanging and then just go get wet. Or even when there was a lot of organized gang fights from block to block and territories were really tight, they would all call a truce on Halloween night and just have egg fights. So seeing that kind of like playfulness, even in the midst of all of this danger, sort of like this rough area, just opened my eyes to a lot of possibility where I started to really pay attention to those moments of joy in people's everyday lives.
That's really awesome. That's really, really cool. So really paying attention to your surroundings. And then you also, you didn't go to public school, you also went to private schools throughout. And that's actually like one of the places where you had your introduction to graffiti, right?
Yeah, in grammar school.
Was it grammar school?
I went to a tiny little Catholic church school.
That no longer exists.
Holy
He
Trinity.
graduated and they said, okay, we don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
Basically, right? They closed it down after?
Yeah.
Holy Trinity.
The class I graduated with...
What did you do to them?
There were only 12 of us in the graduating class. That's how small the school was.
Wow.
So the Archdiocese just couldn't even afford to stay open.
That's amazing.
And there was a lot of time in between subjects where we would either have group time to do work or like quiet time to do homework in class. And so we would just like see each other doodling. Because I was going to like advanced reading and writing, I would like get to see the students in the grade like 1 or 2 grades ahead of me. And so I would learn from other people that were already like 7th and 8th graders, people that were drawing, just doodling stuff, either like a pair of dice or like some old English letters, and or people just trying to do each other's names as nice as possible. That was like the way to pass time, or instead of like actually like doing the work or studying the Constitution.
Studying the Constitution.
Yeah.
So you start off in this really kind of like innovating kind of setting. You're in a very small place, and you're with these very small group of students, and you're kind of like bouncing energies off each other. And then when you get to high school, you're at a college prep that's like a lot bigger, right? St. Ignatius. What was that like, going from this very small group of people, like very innovative, to maybe like a more, what's the other opposite of innovative? Whatever.
I don't know, like an excelling type of environment.
Innovative. You know, like there were a lot more people there, right? Like, what was that like for you, going from like this small setting to this bigger setting?
It was a big challenge. Yeah, it was a huge culture shock. it's like the first time that like an entire environment was slapping me in the face, letting me know that I'm actually really broke. Like before that, I didn't know that the way that my whole neighborhood lived was like a certain type of income or a certain type of like class.
Yeah. Social class.
Yeah, and it wasn't
But it was
until
like a private school. Like, didn't that alone say like something about social status
well, I was accustomed to going to a private school in my neighborhood.
or social class, I should say?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, for me, just going to like a Catholic school still in the neighborhood wasn't that much of a big difference because I still got to see all of my neighbors, still the kids from the park. I still felt like a part of Pilsen. And it's not until like I met people from all the way down from Beverly to all the way up to like the North Shore.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Your dance crew. So you're like dancing, you're in the street, you're making mixtapes, you're DJing, you start DJing, you're like, okay, we need music. So did you teach yourself how to DJ?
I didn't have to teach myself. I was lucky enough to have enough older teenagers that were like, oh, you want to learn how to DJ? Well, I have equipment, just come over.
Yeah, it was a fun thing to do back in the 90s.
Yeah.
My brothers used to have a turntable in the basement. I
And
actually played with it. And it was easy to learn. It was
It takes a
fun.
lot of time too. Like
Yeah.
you could just lose hours being
Learning.
in a basement with
That's the
turntables.
same with art, with any kind of like art form. And that's really cool. So you start mixing, you're kind of like everybody's learning. You guys are in a dance crew. You want to talk to us about your dance crew and then how that helped you evolve into the graffiti world and learn more about the city, the south, the north side.
Sure.
You know, we tend to like stay segregated to like south side
Yeah.
or north side, wherever we started.
So I was in a crew called Posse in Effect. We would hang out at Dvork Park, and it was T, Malo, Rollies, Tobai, all the Trini, everybody that was like from a little 5-block radius of where my house was.
That's in Dvork Park.
Yeah, and there was a park coordinator there. Her name's Chula. She used to let us check out one of the gym rooms to practice, and it was there that nobody would like watch over us. They would just let us have the room for like 3 hours, and we would go maybe like 3 times a week.
That's so cool. How old were you about that time?
I was 12.
6th grade.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then we had access to the gym mats, so we taught each other how to spot each other and do backflips and just
So we're talking about breakdancing.
yeah, or like hip house dancing,
Hip house.
like Fast Eddie and Tyree Cooper and all that stuff was on the radio, and those were the records that I was buying. So we were dancing to it, and then like T knew.
Is this your
Fast
DJing
Eddie.
at 12?
I had my first pair of turntables when I was 13, I think 12, 13.
That's awesome.
But they were like not the right kind of turntables, so I was like doing really bad mixes for about 2 years or something until I was able to
You
buy.
gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, I know.
Gotta start somewhere. And then how did that help you transition into the graffiti world and outside of Pilsen?
Well, we would have to go to different venues throughout the city. There's a place called the Centrum on Ashland and Milwaukee that we used to go a lot to. Places like Alcatraz. All these venues used to have like all ages parties before the curfew. So
The curfew.
yeah, the curfew's like 10:30, I think. And so they would
Big times.
let
Yeah.
the youth in to throw parties and then kick everybody out and then card everybody, so everybody that was of age could stay in a little bit later or till the end of the night. But what that allowed us to do was at like 12 and 13 and 14 years old have like a nightclub experience. There was no bar, right? It was like a dry bar.
Yeah.
But everybody went just for the music and dancing, and so that was it's kind of wild to think of it now, but it was cool and it was normal for us. So we would have our routines already like pre-mixed on a tape, and then we would make the dance moves up the whole week or then for the whole 2 weeks, and then we would go and perform against other dance crews.
And that's around the city.
Hmm.
And so then that's how you ended up in your first graffiti crew?
I got
Traveling
into
to the north side?
Well, we started just tagging everywhere that we would go to.
Oh, starting from the
since,
south side.
Yeah, so since we would like either walk to venues or take the bus, either to like Little Village or up to to like Wicker Park or Lincoln Park.
Orland Park. That's extreme.
That's how we ended up just tagging our names of the dance crew. And it's not until I got into Ignatius that I started learning that there were graffiti crews. So my freshman year, that fall, there were some people in my homeroom that hung out in Lincoln Park a lot. And they were the ones telling me that I should join KMD and hang out at Oz Park. And so even though I was going to Ignatius, we would go up to Lincoln Park every day.
That's awesome. So you're doing all this at a very, very early age. And then you're in a crew, DC5, and then the city of Chicago. Was this during the 80s, was it?
In the
During
90s.
the 80s? Yeah, so in the 90s, you ended up in a competition with the crew, in a CTA Graff competition, and you ended up winning the Merit Scholarship, and you ended up taking a tour at the school Art Institute here in Chicago, and that's when you decided that you were going to go to college after you had no plans of like going to college.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to us about that. And this is a school that he visits. He ends up a student, and somehow, like as a student, you start teaching while you're still a student, right? And then you're teaching, and then you create a thesis, and then you made graffiti history a curriculum. That happened.
I know. It's
like really, like that's just like really, really an honor. And like, I don't know, I'll let you talk a little bit more about that.
There were a lot of years in that span of time.
Yeah.
But
that's 11 years. Can we summarize it?
We can try.
Can you try?
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good time. The CTA was trying to organize graffiti competitions on their property.
It's kind of cool.
It was from 91 till about 96, I think. And it was a great opportunity for people to showcase their artwork, people that wanted to take like graffiti more serious or wanted to really just try to put their best foot forward. So permission walls on a citywide scale at that time in the city hadn't been done before. So it was really great to see. I got to meet more writers from all over the city. I learned about other crews that I hadn't heard of. And then that just kept kind of like our network growing and growing. And so, yeah, I did win. Our crew won second place one year. I think it was 94. And second place was a Merit Scholarship. And so, like you're saying, I took a tour because a friend of mine also wanted to go there. And he took the scholarship. And I just followed along with. And then as we were going around, it really reminded me of like everything that I wanted to do from high school but didn't get the chance to, because I had really good art and photography classes at St. Ignatius.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. So you were doing painting and photography while you were in high school, right? Yeah. And then you get outside, and then you decide that you're gonna go to school. And what was it like to go to school, to be there where everybody's kind of doing this in studio type of work, and then you have to present your work, and you end up showing graffiti, and you pretty much force them to take graffiti as a serious art form? What were the reactions from your instructors and your classmates?
It was.
Did you even like think about it? Like, did you just say like, "This is what I do. This is what I do"?
Yeah, it took me a while.
Did you say like, "Oh, I don't know what they're gonna think"?
I think I was being more vocal and more obvious about my intentions around like the end of sophomore year, maybe the beginning of junior year. But I think freshman year and the better half of my sophomore year, I was just really trying to be a really good student. I wanted to learn all of the stuff in art history. Were you
always a good student, like in grammar school and high school?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, so you just said, yeah. That's good. So then you stood and you didn't kill the momentum because you went straight through. You took a break between the 11 years after you got your bachelor's, then when you went back for the master's. But like at this point, you had gone straight through.
Yeah.
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 So you're like learning from the streets and you're learning in school. That's really cool. What was like? How has that helped you as an artist?
I think it was, it's always like just having two conversations at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, so for me, I mean, and hindsight's 2020, right? Now I could talk about how I grew up and why things were making sense at certain ages, but like being Mexican American, having my grandparents always take me back to Mexico every summer for 3 months, and then they would just let me loose in the city
That's
with
really
my
cool.
cousins.
You
So
go back to your roots all the time.
yeah, we were going to Uruapan.
That's where my grandma's at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
since I
Or
was
she
born.
just passed, I'm sorry.
Oh,
But
sorry.
it's okay.
Yeah, but like since I was born till I was 14 years old, I would
Mhm.
spend all my summers in Mexico, and then
So cool.
my grandparents were just so relaxed about letting me run around the city because I had a lot of cousins there. And so I think that sense of freedom of like running all over the city. I mean, being really young, we were driving cars, riding motorcycles, riding our bikes everywhere, just wandering around all day and night and not having to worry about anything. And I was super young. I started doing that probably like when I was 8 and 9 already.
Yeah.
So that sense of freedom every summer in Mexico, I think also played into like my playfulness around graffiti and like just exploring rooftops and like
Not being afraid.
yeah, jumping into all sorts of like dangerous scenarios just to get to a good spot to paint and stuff like that.
So going back to this classroom setting, when you present this stuff to your teacher, what were your teacher's first reactions and your classmates?
My teachers were trying to redirect my interest
Were they?
back to like
Yeah,
stuff
you said you got a
that
flat critique.
yeah
Yeah.
I would try to bring in photos, or I would try to at first I was trying to do graffiti with like oil paints and stuff like that. I was like,
Really?
this looks ugly.
Not the same.
Like, and it's taking oils like they're taking forever to paint, and I already knew how quick spray paint worked. So I'm like, man, why am I beating myself against this these materials and knowing that
This
oil
artist
takes
that
so
you're
long?
not.
Yeah. So that kind of like frustration was really like all freshman and sophomore year of trying to like learn all their tools and materials, but also still try to represent graffiti in the classroom somehow. And it's not till I started just being really honest with my painting professors and telling them, look, your school is great, but it's not set up for me to like just come in here and paint a graffiti piece, and that's what I do. And so I just started bringing in all my photos. And I'm like, I've been doing this for many years, and it makes no sense for me to try to stop doing it. I want your help in help me make it better instead. And so once I started having those real honest conversations,
Being honest and having a conversation.
yeah, they were like,
That's all it took.
yeah,
That's all it
basically.
took. That's all it took.
They're like, all right, well,
It's like the hardest thing. I don't know why.
they're like, we know we don't have these walls for you, and if you have walls in your neighborhood that you went through the trouble of getting permission for in the first place, instead of coming on Thursdays, go paint your walls, and then we'll see you on critique week. Just bring in your photographs.
That's so cool.
So that was really cool, those professors. And then the other part was all of my classmates were just kind of like thrown for a loop. They were learning all of the studio work, like color theory, or trying to make new work out of different favorite artists throughout different parts of history. And so I would listen in on their critiques and just be patient, and but also like listening to where their interests were and stuff like that. But when like the professors would talk about my work, they would just really get frustrated because they're like, we don't know how to do that, or we don't even know how to talk about that, or why does that even matter? Or, I don't understand how this is important or why it's relevant. Like,
And it's super important. Why is it so important, and how does it feel now to be like an instructor in that same institution where you were criticized?
I think it's really redeeming. I knew right away since I took my first art history class that I was like, oh, okay, so graffiti is just like Renaissance or all these other genres that we like celebrate over the centuries. And I was like, well, this is just us doing it now in the present moment. Like, it's unfolding and we're in it now. So all of the stuff that we really like about 16th century or 19th century, like it's the exact same format. It's just gonna take a while for people to appreciate it. And as soon as I like realized that, and I knew that was like a truth that's like undeniable, I got a lot of confidence in everything else that I was gonna do.
And boy, are people appreciating it. I mean, it's become it's become very popular. It's become very trendy. And you took these first, like innovating, like very very risky, big, huge moves to go back to school to specifically so that you'll be able to teach graffiti. The people in the neighborhood, the parents, said, why? How can you teach our children, or how can our children learn without getting in trouble? So you literally listened to the community, and you went back to school so that you can make this happen, and here you are, now you're teaching, and you've accomplished so much, and now we're running out of time. I told you this is going to go by like super, super fast. Some of my favorite things that you've done, aside from like creating this thesis and changing history, has been this exhibition here that I'm going to show everybody if I get the right button. Of course I didn't. Here we go. Outside in the Mexican American street art movement in Chicago. This is an art exhibition that you curated at the National Mexican Museum here in Pilsen, and you gathered this roster of really great artists, Chicago local artists. Like it was a really, really great roster. And I don't know if you know, but this opening brought the most guests in the museum in all of history.
That's what I've been hearing.
Did you know that? Because that happened. I took a tour in the vault, and then when we got to these archives, it was very exciting to be able to talk about this.
Cool.
That was really, really cool. And another really big thing in Chicago, like as Chicago slowly was accepting. What year was this?
2013.
What was this like for you?
It was great. It just felt like I finally had the opportunity to bring everything I was learning downtown back into the neighborhood. So
People really appreciated
it was
the
really
show.
personal for me.
Yeah, I like the energy there, I think. It was like really special.
Yeah, and I think I took it as an educational moment too, because I had already finished my master's. So I was thinking about this is like the first time that a lot of audiences and patrons are thinking about graffiti and street art within a museum context. So what's the most like democratic sort of introduction that I could offer, right? Like not only all graffiti lettering people, or not only all like character people, or what's the widest sort of range that I can give an introduction to that gives like the biggest breadth of what's happening right now. So that I went on to include like street artists and installation artists and people that are just really working out in public space.
Yeah, and that was really special. And so graffiti in the way that you teach it is very special. You say that you're creating a place, a community where ideas are safe, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important that you're doing this. It allows people to be free. You've encouraged people, you've inspired people so greatly, even to create this Kiara Fresh Wall, a mural project. You want to talk to us like very, very briefly about that?
Yeah. So Kiara, her parents were childhood friends of mine in the neighborhood. Muñeca and Rolis were actually part of PIE, so we used to dance as kids. And they had Kiara at a very young age. I got the chance to meet Kiara probably when she was 18, 19, just me painting walls and her coming up and introducing herself. And she's like, oh, I'm Rolly's daughter. I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. I saw you when you were born.
We aged.
Yeah.
It happened so quick.
And so, it's a tragedy that she passed away in an accident. And she had gone through After School Matters. She was taking in graffiti classes at Elevarte and photography and hip hop MC classes. So she was doing all of the hip hop education that the city was able to offer her. So much so that it got her into Columbia College, and she was an undergrad there, really getting into rap and recording. So it's a real sad event that she passed. But her family reached out and asked if I'd be interested in doing a memorial mural. So of course we were able to pull the community together. We got a wall, we got artists, because I already had Graffiti Institute in place, we were able to just get a bunch of volunteers, and in 3 days we put the mural together.
That's amazing. So Graffiti Institute is a nonprofit that you've also created. So you teach, aside from teaching at the Art Institute, you also teach out of the Graffiti Institute, and it's a nonprofit. And we would really like to see the Graffiti Institute show here. I keep telling him he needs to do that. That'd be really cool. And you just continue to teach And like I just want to wrap up saying that, like, because I know we have to go, and I know there was like so much, but you can always learn more about Miguel. You can always contact him directly through our website, because there's a lot of information about him and what he's done for the community. And one thing that I really want to thank you for and praise you for, like in the graffiti world, there's a lot of ego. There's always a lot of ego. And here you have a graffiti artist, an amazing graffiti artist, who has stepped and learned both inside and outside of the studio of school, and you went back to school, put yourself through all of this so that you can teach, so that you can give back.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that.
Sure,
and creating
thanks.
all of this and inspiring so much and really showing the power of education, because you did this through knowledge.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being with us. We'll see you next week.